Hi everyone. Last time we learned about inheritance and you created the temp GameObj. Today I want to add a different kind of enemy, one that has its own movement pattern. So we're going to extend GameObj again to create a special type of GameObj that has a fixed movement pattern. Really, it's going to work exactly like the regular GameObj, except we're going to write our own version of the update method, which uses a timer to decide how it moves. And then it would be nice if we're going to use this for enemies for them to be able to shoot back at us, so we're also going to add a method that will allow them to shoot back. So let's go ahead and create a new class. I'm going to call it fixed motion enemy. And it extends GameObj. And just like we did last time, we'll add a constructor. Okay, so what's going to be special about these? We're going to make our own update method. And just like last time, we want to run the update of the parent. So we want to run GameObj's update. I think the type of motion that I want to give these enemies is I want them to move right for 1 second, then move down for 1 second, then move left for 1 second, then move down for 1 second, and repeat. So a sort of a bouncing back and forth pattern. And I think I'm going to have them shoot exactly once per second. So just like we did in main, let's use a timer to control when the motion changes. So I'll create an int called timer, which will start at 0. And then inside update, the first thing I'll do is I'll increase the time. And this is the trick to getting the motion to happen. I'm going to change my own x speed and y speed depending on what the timer says. So, for example, if time is between 0 and, let's say, 30. So if I'm in the first second here, bigger than 0, smaller than 30, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my x speed to be equal to something positive, but not too fast, maybe 2. Otherwise, if the timer is larger than 30 and less than 60, so that's if it's in the second to second, then I'm going to set my x speed to 0. And then if it's in my third second, I'm going to set it to negative. So here I'll be going right at a speed of 2. Here I will not be going left or right. Here I'll be going left at a speed of 2. Okay. And I think I'll set it here so that the y speed is just always, let's see, going down would be positive. So I'll set the y speed just always to be positive 1. So let's go ahead and make some and see if they move the way that we want them to, and then we'll have them shoot afterwards. So here I am in main. Just like I have lists for all my other types of objects, I'm going to make a list for my enemies. Only my enemies aren't GameObjs, they are fixed motion enemy objects. So fixed motion enemy, and now we'll call it enemy list. Inside setup is where I actually have to create the list, just like the other lists. And then I'll go ahead and create maybe 5 of them. So I'll have I loop from 0 to 5. And I'm just going to have a whole row of them all along the top. So I'll set their x coordinates to be maybe 10 plus I times 100. And the y coordinate I want to be off the screen, so it's going to be something negative, maybe negative 30. And it doesn't matter what I set for their speed, because when I update them, they're going to change their speed. Oh, and last I need an image, but I haven't actually created my image yet, so let's do this. pimage enemy image. I've already created, here in assets you can see if I refresh, I've already created an enemy ship image, so I'll just load it. So there's my constructor for fixed motion enemy, and now I'll put it in the list, which I think I called enemy list. So I did. So I'm taking my enemy E, and I'm asking my list to add E. Alright, just like all of the other things in the whole game, I've got to update and draw all of them. And because they're in a list, I need that pattern where I loop over a list. So let's do all things with enemies. So I'm going to loop over the enemy list length. And let's see, I can't say, well, I could say GameObj, but remember they're a special type of GameObj. They're the fixed motion enemy. So I'll create a fixed motion enemy variable. And now I'll get an enemy. And then I'll have it update, and I'll have it draw. Okay, let's just test to make sure that much works. So there they are. Oh, except they don't seem to be moving left. They seem to be just going down. So let's try and figure out why. So I want to try and imagine what is the computer doing. So timer starts at 0. Whenever I update, I increase by 1. If the timer is between 0 and 30, I do this. If it's between 30 and 60, I do that. If it's between another 30 and 60, well, that's not right. If it's between 60 and 90, I'll do that. But then I want it all to start over again. And I guess that's what's going wrong, is if the timer is larger than 90, let's reset the timer back to 0, so that way I'll start the whole cycle again. Okay, let's try this a second time. So they're definitely moving, but I want them to go straight down when they hit the left side also. So see if you can figure out what needs to be adjusted in here so that they look like this. Let's go ahead and let them shoot at us. So we've never had to have a way of having another object shoot us. So the place to put that feels most natural would be inside update, because that's where we're doing all of the things that happen every frame. So if something's going to shoot at us, it should probably happen in update. The problem with that is everything in our game is an object, and main needs to know about all the objects. So if I create a new bullet inside update, I don't have any way of getting that bullet back over into main so that I can add it to a list to update it and draw it. So the way I'm going to solve this problem is I'm going to create a completely different method that returns a GameObj, and it's called shoot. And then maybe let's create another method that returns Boolean called time to shoot. So this will be true if it's time for the enemy to shoot, otherwise it'll be false. So let's say that I want to shoot every 30 seconds or something. Let's create another timer that we can use to time whether or not we're ready to shoot. So here inside update, I'm going to increase the other timer, because update runs once per frame. So all of our timers we want to update once per frame, because that's a great way of keeping track of the passage of time. So here in time to shoot, we'll just say if that timer is larger than, let's shoot once every 30 frames. So if timer2 is larger than 30, I'll return true. But first, I'll reset the timer. Otherwise, I'll return false. And I want to reset the timer because if it's time to shoot, then I don't want it to keep counting up forever, because then it will think it's always time to shoot. Instead, I want there to be a pause, and the only way to add a pause is to set the timer back to 0 so that it has to count up from 0 again. All shoot is going to do is it's going to create a bullet object and return it. So let's do that. Return new GameObj. And the bullet is going to start where I am. It's going to start where the fixed motion enemy is. So the bullet XY should start out the same as the enemy XY. I want the bullet to go down pretty quickly, so it should have a 0 X speed, and the Y speed should be something like maybe 14 or 18. Or maybe I'll make the enemy bullets go a little bit slower. I'll make them go speed 10. And then a diameter, and then we need an image. Well, if I wanted to, I could load an image right here. I could say pimage image equals load image, and so on. That's going to be a little bit inconvenient. So let's figure out, maybe I should load the image up here at the very top to start with, so that way whenever it needs an image, it's available. Or maybe, even better, if I need a pimage here, let's just have my method take a pimage as input. And that's the image that I'll use for whatever object I create. Alright, so what's going to happen now is my enemy is moving, it's moving, it's moving. I'm going to ask it, is it time to shoot? Is it time to shoot? Eventually, it'll say true, and then I can run the shoot method. So let's do that all inside main. So here's where I'm asking my enemy to update. Here's where the enemy's drawing. Here's where I'll say e dot, e dot, why doesn't it know about my thing? Oh, time to shoot. So if time to shoot is true, then we'll say e dot shoot. I'm going to use the same image of the bullet that my player shoots. So let's just make sure that exists. Power up image, bullet image is what I called it. So in main, I already have the bullet image. I'm taking the bullet image, and that's the input to shoot. And so shoot takes that image, and it hands that image to the game object that's the bullet. And so now the bullet will use that one. But then I immediately take this bullet object and I return it. So the bullet object that my ship created is coming right back here to where I ran shoot from. So that means that I have to create a variable to hold it. Maybe I'll call it new bullet to remember that it's a new one. So the output of shoot is new bullet. Okay, well, why did we need to return new bullet? Because main is responsible for drawing every object in the game. And so what that means is it needs to store every single object in the game here, otherwise it won't know about it to draw it. If I just had my bullet inside my enemy object, the main program would never know about it. So I think the last thing I need to do is, just like everything else, there might be a lot of enemy bullets, so that means I need a list to hold them all. So you should go ahead right now and do the same pattern that we opened with. So create a list for all the enemy bullets. You'll need to actually create the list here in setup. And then inside draw, the same way we do for everything else, loop over the list and update and draw each one of the bullets. Here's what mine looks like now. They're definitely shooting, and they are shooting so quickly that I can't possibly escape it. I'm also noticing that the bullets seem to be recycling up to the top of the screen. Think about why that should be. I think that you will be able to figure it out if you think about what object it is. Let's fix just that part together. So all of those enemy bullets are GameObjs. So let's go to GameObj.update, and you probably have something like this. After you move it, you say if it's off the bottom of the screen, then let's randomly reset it. So let's cut that part and run the game again. So now the bullets don't recycle, that's perfect, but the problem is the asteroids don't either. So it's like we want the asteroids to reset, but we don't want the bullets to reset. So one thing you could do is if you wanted to extend GameObj to a new class called Asteroid, you could make a special version of Update which both moves and recycles. Instead of that, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to main, and where the asteroids are, I'm going to find where the asteroids update. I think it's up here. Enemies, asteroids. Okay, so here's where the asteroids update. So I'm just going to add that if statement here. I just pasted from what I cut from inside GameObj. So I'm saying if it's off the bottom of the screen, let's reset it. The problem is, it's red here because it doesn't know what object are we asking about. What object is off the bottom of the screen? Before, when that code was here inside GameObj, we knew who we were talking about. We were talking about ourselves. We are a GameObj, so we were saying, is it true that we're off the bottom of the screen? But now that we pasted that code into main, main isn't a GameObj. It's not moving, so it doesn't know which one of the many objects are we asking about. So what we got to do is we've got to ask a particular variable to run that method for us. So G is the name of my GameObj here. It's the name of my asteroid. So I'll ask G, hey G, are you off the bottom of the screen? And if so, then I will tell it to reset itself. So now I'm telling only asteroids to do the resetting behavior, but bullets won't. So I'm going to hide in this safe zone over here. And you see the asteroids are recycling and the bullets are not. Okay, the very, very, very last step of this is I would like you to slow down the rate at which the bullets shoot. So I want the bullets to shoot slower. And then the second thing is, it doesn't do any good to have bullets unless they do damage. So you should use the collision detection that you already know about, that we did last week, and add collision detection to detect collisions between the enemy bullets and the player. That's it.